This video learns product managers how to build a product roadmap in Baserow using an agile approach. The foundation of every roadmap is the definition of epics, features and user stories. Features are prioritized by using the RISE framework. Once the priorities are set, the focus shifts to preparing user stories for workload estimation. Assigning a team member to a story and schedule it in a sprint puts the stories on the product roadmap. Throughout the sprint, progress is closely monitored to ensure that the stories can be completed on time. When a feature is fully implemented, it is ready for release. This means the end of the current product lifecycle and the start of the next one. But first, let's focus a bit on the agile approach and the database model that is the result of this. Product managers receive input from various sources such as user feedback, market research, new rules and legislation, and company objectives and key results. These inputs are translated into initiatives to ensure alignment between stakeholder needs and the company objectives. In an agile environment, initiatives are broken down into epics. An epic represents a large body of work that spans over multiple months or even quarters and requires further refinement for implementation. To refine an epic, teams use features. A feature still requires multiple sprints to be completed, but fits within a single release cycle of the product. Features are prioritized on the product roadmap based on a score, which can be calculated using various methods and frameworks such as RISE. Each feature consists of one or multiple user stories. A user story is a simple description of a part of the feature from the perspective of the user. It must fit in within a single sprint and includes acceptance criteria to ensure complete and correct implementation. This results in the following relational database model. One epic containing multiple features, one features containing multiple user stories, one user story is implemented by one team member, but one team member implements multiple user stories. One user story is implemented in one sprint, but one sprint implements multiple stories. One sprint is bundled in one release, but one release contains multiple sprints. This structure is implemented in Baserow with linked fields. I have a linked field from epics to features. Features are linked to user stories. I have a sprint with a fixed period of 2 weeks, and multiple sprints are bundled into a single release. And of course, the user stories are executed by the team. The first step is assigning a priority to each feature. A widely adopted method for this is calculating the RISE score. This score is based on 4 factors. Reach, being the number of users that will be affected by this feature within a month. The impact on revenue, user experience, satisfaction or other key metrics. The confidence the team has in the estimation on the reach, impact and effort. And finally, the effort, which are the estimated workdays required for successful completion of the feature. The RISE score itself is calculated by multiplying reach with impact and confidence and dividing this by effort. Features with the highest RISE score should get the highest priority. Let's implement this in Baserow. The features table has some additional fields. I have a field for reach, impact and confidence, all rating fields on a scale of 10. Also a field for the effort that holds the estimated effort, and a formula field, RISE, that applies the RISE formula and does an additional check if effort is not blank, otherwise it should show 0 anyway. Let's create a new view, and this view will be specially to show the RISE score, and it will sort all the features based on their RISE score, where the highest score is on top. So I immediately see which ones are the most important, and I assign the status approved. Those are approved. The bottom features are on hold because they have a very low RISE score, and the middle ones, well, they are considered. If there's time on the roadmap, we can implement them. With the features now prioritized, the next step is to examine their associated user stories and estimate the time required for their completion. A good user story meets 3 requirements. It is well written in the form of, as a certain type of user, I want to perform an action so that I can reach my goal. It also contains acceptance tests in the form of, given some context, when an action is taken, then this is my expected outcome. And finally, a user story is well documented. There is a formula field in the user stories table to check each of those requirements. For story correct, I use the contained function in combination with the and function to see if every part of the sentence is present. For the documentation, I use the getFileCounts function to check if a document is actually uploaded. Result is the can be estimated field that uses the AND operator to check if all criteria has been met. Let's switch to a different view to do the actual estimation. First of all, I want to add an additional field here, and this will be a field that shows the estimated effort for the entire feature. So it is a lookup field to the effort of my feature, and this shows the effort for the entire feature. Now, I'm going to add a field that shows the estimated work for each user story, and it's a number field. And I'm going to add some numbers over here for features that are approved or considered. This is too big, so I come back to it later. And let's add some numbers here. If I now have a look at it, well, the estimated work should be more or less equal to the estimated effort for the entire feature. But this one, there's a deviation that is way too big. I have 13 estimated hours versus 10 feature hours. So let's capture this in our features table. I create a separate view for this. And in this view, I have a roll-up field that summarizes all the estimated workloads for the user stories related to the feature, and a field that calculates the difference between the user story effort and my usual effort. Now, I want to mark the features that are problematic with a red background. And I will do this for features where the total story effort is higher than 0. In other words, for features that have estimated user stories. And the effort difference, well, it must be between 1 and -1. So it must be higher than 1, or my difference must be lower than -1. So all those that have more than one workday of difference are problematic. Those are two problematic features. Let's have a look at the first one. That's feature number 5. I have 7 user story effort hours for 9 estimated feature hours. So there's a difference of 2. Let's look in the user stories table and look for feature number 5. Let's see over here. And maybe, yeah, I underestimated this user story. I added 1 and now it is within the borders. The other one, the difference is way too big. So I'm gonna put this on hold for the moment, and I'm going to approve the next feature in the list. So the next one with a highest rise score. It's important to detect these differences in the user stories table as well. That's why I added the field re-estimate that shows a stopwatch for user stories that belong to a feature where the estimation of the feature deviates too much from the estimation of the user stories. Let's put user stories where the difference is too big on hold for the moment. A user story must be completed in a single sprint. In our scenario, with a fixed sprint of 2 weeks, this means that no story can take longer than 10 workdays. A consequence is that the estimated effort of a feature cannot exceed the number of associated user stories multiplied by 10. In our case, all features have 2 user stories, so the estimated effort of a feature cannot be higher than 20. Otherwise, we need to split up in more user stories. I created the field refine with a formula, and this checks for problematic features with their user stories. The status of the user stories that are problematic will be set to needs review because they need to split up later in our project. And all the other user stories, well, they can be approved and added to our next sprint. Now that we have determined which user stories to implement, it's time to organize a sprint. A sprint contains a number of user stories where each user story is executed by a single team member. First thing that needs to be done is adding 2 new fields to the user stories table. One field for assigning a team member to the story and one field for assigning the story to a sprint. Let's assign the most appropriate team member to a story, and let's assign all the approved stories to the first scheduled sprint. A product manager should not assign more than 8 estimated workdays to a team member in a single sprint. First of all, the workload is just an estimation. Second, team members also perform other tasks like participating in meetings, answering emails, offer support to customers, to coworkers, and so on. We're gonna create a group by, and we're gonna group by sprint and assignee to detect this overload. It becomes immediately clear that the workload for Janice and Jonathan is too high for the sprints. There are 2 ways to solve this. First of all, replace a team member. For example, user story number 4 can be assigned to Lane, who is also a database specialist. You can also assign the story to a future sprint. For example, user story number 5 and 6 belong to the same feature and can be postponed. The sprint table needs some extra fields to monitor the progress of the sprint. Fields for the number of assigned and completed user stories, field for the accumulated workload of assigned and completed stories, and the progress of the sprint, which is the ratio between the assigned and completed workload. The assigned stories and workload can be done through a count field. The completed stories and workload requires a formula field that combines the sum and filter function. It is possible to already assign user stories that are not approved yet to get a rough assumption of the long-term roadmap. Our sprint is now ready to start. Let's change the status of some user stories to completed. An easy way to change the status of a story is using a Kanban view and drag the story to the appropriate column. This is now reflected in the sprints table since the completion progress is updated. The final phase of a life cycle is the release of a new version. A release can only contain completed features. This means we must be able to detect which features are fully completed. The features table has an additional field that uses the every function to check if all user stories for that feature are completed. This information should also be available in the release table. We can accomplish this by adding a rollup field to the user stories table. The sprint table has a lookup field and a formula field so that both the completion status and the ID of the feature is shown. This is passed to the release table where a lookup field reflects that completion of the feature schedule for each release. Additionally, we can include the estimated date for each release. This will be the end date of the last sprint associated with the release. Once again, this can be achieved by implementing a rollup field that displays the maximum date of the associated sprints. This video provided a comprehensive overview of the entire release cycle of a product, covering essential stages such as feature prioritization, workload estimation, and sprint scheduling. Remember that every organization is unique, and while the concepts and methodologies shared in this video serve as valuable guidelines, it's essential to tailor them to your own specific needs. Feel free to customize fields and views to align them with your organization's workflow and objectives. There are plenty of resources available through Baserow.io that can help you in setting up a product roadmap tailored to your needs. And don't forget about our helpful community of Baserow users that are always available to answer any questions you may have along the way.